Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Finding Yourself Again, where we focus on hope, healing, and recovery from toxic narcissistic abuse. The ultimate goal is to establish self-love, healthy relationships, and ultimately find yourself. My name's Dontre. I'm a survivor of toxic abuse from a narcissist/borderline. If you find these videos to be helpful to you, I ask that you subscribe, like, share, and watch any other videos on my channel that may be helpful to you. I ain't gonna hold y'all up, so with that being said, let's get into today's video. So today's video is gonna be about what is borderline personality disorder, BPD. Um, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I already made the video about what is NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and you could check that video out if you're curious. It's kind of similar to this one. It has 9 characteristics in the DSM, which is the diagnostic diagnostic statistic manual for mental health disorders. I believe, don't quote me, but in my NPD video, I have the real definition written down, but I didn't write down what DSM means on this one. But regardless, I have experienced BPD. I don't have BPD, but I have a partner. I have an ex-partner, that I was with for some years that had BPD. She was diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder. And she exhibited a lot of these traits that I'm about to show you. And like NPD, with BPD, you only need to have at least 5 out of 9. So you need to have at least 5 out of 9 in order to be diagnosed with BPD. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, what is BPD, right? Well, it's a mental health disorder characterized by a pervasive pattern of instability and interpersonal relationships, self-image, affect, and impulsivity. Right? So it's a mental health disorder. And it's characterized by like a pattern of things. Instability, like I said, interpersonal relationships, issues with self-image, and impulsivity as well. It is a recognized diagnosis in the DSM-5. It typically begins before or by early adulthood. While challenging, it's treatable. Many people can still lead fulfilling lives with appropriate support, of course. The next thing we're going to talk about is the 9 diagnostic criteria for BPD directly in the DSM-5. Like I said, a person must exhibit at least 5 or more of the 9 criteria to be diagnosed with BPD. So I'm going to go through a list of all the 9 and give you provide you with some examples as well. So number 1 is going to be frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Intense fear of being alone or rejected, leading to desperate actions to prevent. For example, constantly checking in with loved ones, getting very upset by perceived slights or delays in response, clinging behavior, and more. I've experienced stuff like this before in my relationship, where she really just tried to isolate me. She really wouldn't want me to go anywhere. If I went anywhere, it was a problem. She tried to control where I went, who I talked to, how long, and I would say, there was also the clinging behavior. Like, She would want to be with me all day long, you know, for the longest time, until she started to devalue me. Then the dynamic changed. You feel me? But I mean, before that, it was clinging behavior. It was almost all of those. You know what I mean? Like, just, you know, if, you know, she would be upset by like perceived slights, or you like delays in response. Like, if I don't get back to her like right immediately, she'll have an issue with that. Like, why are you taking so long? And that's why people in today's time, when I be talking to them and they get upset with me because I'm not responding right away, and it starts to get me to feel all anxious and nervous, I immediately know in my head right there, like, oh yeah, this is somebody that I would not ever take serious, because look at what they're doing. You know what I mean? This toxic shit. The next one is going to be a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships, characterized by extremes between idealization and devaluation, known as splitting. So splitting is basically where the person with borderline will shift rapidly between seeing others as all good and all bad, often in the same relationship. For example, they'll idolize someone one moment and then suddenly view them as completely worthless after a perceived disappointment. You know, so it's like one moment you're like on a pedestal, and then the next moment you're like the worst person on earth. You're like a terrible human to them. You know, there's no in between. It's good or bad. You know, it's black or white. That's splitting. And people with BPD, that's known for people with BPD. They split. The next one is going to be identity disturbances, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. So this is a fluctuating and uncertain sense of who they are, including their values, goals, and identity. For example, constantly changing their interests, career, aspirations, or even appearance, feeling like they don't really know themselves. And you know, it's crazy that it says that too, because as I was writing down a lot of these, like, I was looking back on my relationship, right? Because my ex-partner was actually diagnosed with BPD, and you know, I believe that she also had NPD, but she never got diagnosed for that, of course. So we're never able to truly know. But you know, to me, I believe that she was, because of the behaviors. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I'm not saying that she in fact was, but I believe that she was. And regardless of if she factually was or not, it's bad. It's toxic. You know what I mean? Regardless of who they are, man, woman, whatever, like, it's toxic behavior that you don't really want to be a part of. You know what I mean? But as I was reviewing these and writing them down, I was just relating to so many of these on the list, the same as the NPD video, you know. I'm just relating to them, and I'm just like, wow, you know, I seen this behavior, I seen that behavior, you know. So I'm gonna give you some examples down the line. But as in this one, the identity disturbance, I remember my ex telling me plenty times, being like, you know, I feel like I don't know who I am, you know, or I feel empty inside. And for the longest time, I didn't really know what to do with that. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do when somebody tells you that they feel like they don't know who they are? Or it's like, you know, naturally you're gonna just tell them some stuff like, hey, well, why don't you find your passions, find your desires, find things you love to do, you're interested in, right? And I tried that, and she would hardly do things that she's interested in other than substances, you know. So I don't know, man, but You know, the only thing I could really relate to is the emptiness. After the relationship ended, I had a void. I felt empty because I felt like there was a part of me that was gone. And it's like, it was weird because it's not that I felt like I didn't know myself, but I felt like I just, I was a shell of myself, you know, and I felt empty. And it was the first time I actually knew what it feels like to be empty, you know. And mind you, people with BPD feel empty on a consistent, frequent basis. You know, so if you don't feel empty frequently or hardly or never, then, you know, I would take that and be grateful, you know. And I just wanted to just kind of touch on that a little bit, you know. All right, so the fourth one is going to be impulsivity in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging. For some examples are going to be spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. Acting on urges without considering the consequences. For example, engaging in risky sexual behavior, excessive spending sprees, substance misuse during times of distress. And I've experienced that in my ex relationship as well. My ex cheating on me, and then emotionally, but more than likely physically. I just never caught her. But, you know, after the relationship broke up, I talked with her still for a little while. I was getting hoovered for a couple months. And one time she told me about a risky sexual behavior that she had, a risky sexual experience that she had. Mind you, this is after me. And, you know, the activity that she did was something that me and her have never have done in the whole 5 years that we was together. But then she just meets this guy on Instagram, and because he has a little bit of status or whatever, she goes the extra mile for him. You know, so I ain't gonna get into detail with her business, you know, like to in explaining what she did, but just know that that was a risky sexual behavior, you know, and an experience. When I was with her, we were constantly broke. She wouldn't go on excessive spending sprees. I will just say that she just didn't really have good money management. But then again, neither did I at that time either, you know. And substance misuse was common between me at the time and her. Although I don't partake, you know, anymore. The last time I checked, she still partakes in substances. You know, I don't partake in drinking or drugs and stuff. So, but so the next one, number 5, is gonna be recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures, threats, or self-mutilation behavior. These are serious symptoms often related to intense emotional pain and a desire for relief. Example, making suicidal threats when feeling rejected, engaging in cutting or burning as a way to cope with overwhelming emotions. And it's very important to seek help if you are doing this, or if you know anybody that's going through this, because obviously there's better ways to cope with things than to resort to self-mutilation, self-harm, you know, harming yourself in any way. You know, there's a lot better ways to cope, you know, and you can learn that in therapy. The next one is number 6, and it is affective instability due to marked reactivity of mood, intense episodic dysphoria, irritability, or anxiety lasting a few hours and only rarely more than a few days. Experiencing rapid and intense shifts in mood that can be triggered by seemingly minor events. For example, sudden bouts of sadness, anger, or anxiety that can change quickly. Many people mistake this disorder for bipolar disorder because of this right here. You know, people are having these like random bursts of sadness or anger or whatever, and then it can just change, you know, and that's like bipolar-ish, you know. So that's where people get the, oh, well, you know, we need to do a little more, like psychiatrists and mental health professionals have to do a little more, you know, got to dig a little bit deeper, you know, into some other, you know, things to make sure, because that sounds like it's bipolar disorder, but it's not. It's this is also a trait of borderline, right? So the next one is number 7, and it's going to be chronic feelings of emptiness, a persistent sense of being hollow, bored, or without substance. So like I kind of just briefly mentioned earlier, these people feel like this persistently, consistently, common, frequently, often. Like they feel like this often. You know, imagine feeling hollow inside or empty. Like imagine what that would feel like. You know, like a lot of people probably actually don't know, but if you do know what that feels like, you know that it feels terrible. You know, and I felt like that before, so I know it feels terrible. And I can empathize with people that experience this. So the next one is going to be inappropriate, intense anger, or difficulty controlling anger, like frequent displays of temper, constant anger, or recurrent physical fights. Experiencing disproportionate anger that's difficult to manage. For example, reacting with extreme rage or small frustrations, having frequent arguments or outbursts. I remember one time I was talking to my ex on the phone after the relationship, and we were just trying to be cool, which is a terrible idea, but we're just trying to be cool and try to maintain some type of relationship. And we, like, I remember she was just walking through a dog park or something like that, and somebody like told her something minor about the dog or something like that, and she just like full on started cussing at him and yelling at him and had a outburst on him. Mind you, this is a random person that she don't know from a can of paint. It's not like she was in a relationship with them or whatever. Like, she just had a random outburst. And it's kind of crazy because narcissists, I feel like, do their best to portray this person that they're not, you know, in public. But there's times that they could be triggered. Like, and if you do trigger them, then like their colors are gonna show if you do trigger them, you know. So I think it's just one of those moments, you know. But yeah, anyway, so let's get back to the next one. All right, guys, so this is gonna be the last one, number 9. Transient stress related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. During times of high stress, they may experience brief periods of suspicious thoughts about others' intentions or feeling detached from their body or reality. For example, briefly believe that someone is trying to harm them when overwhelmed, feeling like they are watching themselves from outside their body, which is kind of creepy. But on the real, when I had first put this when I was first writing this down, I was like, oh man, I didn't recognize this trait in my ex. But then I did, and I remembered like multiple times of us getting in like verbal arguments, and she would always like just look kind of off at a certain point, and I'm guessing that's where she would be like detached or whatever. But at a certain point too, during the arguments, like in like here and there, like I just remember a couple times where she would be like, oh, you're trying to kill me, or you're trying to hurt me, and I'm like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm not, I don't know why she's saying that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not choking her. I'm not violating her. I'm not like doing nothing to her. You know what I mean? We're at most, we're just arguing, you know, but she's saying stuff like that. And it goes to show you that she was overwhelmed, and she was feeling like I was out to get her or something. You know what I mean? So, you know, and it's been other moments too, you know, where she's been paranoid, and, you know, and I thought, well, maybe it's just because she was doing substances or whatever, you know, but, you know, now it makes more sense though, you know, like now that, you know, now that I've been knowing this stuff for a while. But, you know, it's a lot of stuff to recall and analyze and stuff, you know. So the next thing I'm gonna go over is important nuances and additional key points, right? So some things to remember, right? The first one I'm gonna mention is the hallmark of BPD is basically intense emotions and responses, and difficulty regulating them. Feelings can be overwhelming and long lasting. Um, Relationship challenges. The core symptoms of BPD can lead to significant difficulties in forming and maintaining stable and healthy relationships. Fear of abandonment and splitting can be very challenging, you know, so they have all these different little characteristics about them that make it very hard to have like establish and maintain a healthy relationship. So you got to know that if you're going to be involved with somebody that has this disorder, are you willing to put up with all these challenges, you know? And how's it going to affect you? Because at the end of the day, it's your life. You know, you're the one that has to live in your body. And I think it's important to address what effect it has on your mental health and your well-being. Self-harm as coping. Self-harm is not used for attention seeking, but often a maladaptive way to cope with intense emotional pain for the people with BPD. You know, generally people that you know, they just can't cope with whatever they're going through emotionally and don't know how, and they take it out on themselves. You know, they'll cut themselves and stuff like that. Let's see here. Co-occurring conditions. BPD often comes with other mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and eating disorders. I thought the eating disorders was kind of weird. I'm not exactly sure why that one is in there, but I'm guessing that I'm guessing that it's like addictive disorders. And yeah, and you know, you can also have other disorders. Like you could have BPD and NPD as well. You know, there's a fair amount of people out there that have both, you know, so just keep that in mind. Stigma reduction. BPD is a legit mental health condition. People with BPD should be treated with compassion, understanding, and access to effective treatment. Not every person with BPD/NPD is a bad person. These people have been through a lot of trauma and are humans. So you got to keep in mind, man, at the end of the day, these people are humans too, you know. And yes, you may have been hurt by one, and you may be in the process of healing and recovery and going no contact, and I definitely encourage all of that. Therapy, definitely encourage that, and finding a good support system and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, what you don't want to have in your heart is resentment towards these people or anybody. And the reason why I say that is because resentment is going to hold you back from healing. If you're going to sit here and be resentful towards people in your life, you're going to have a harder, longer time on the healing journey. And my goal is to get you healed as soon as possible. That's the mission. We don't want to be holding you back by hindering you because you have a thing for these types of people, or you hate these people, or just accept that this is the way that they survive. And although many of them know right from wrong, a lot of them don't know the effect of what they're doing is causing to loved ones and people that love them, right? So just understand they have a personality disorder, so you got to try to really understand what a personality disorder is, right? Hope for treatment. BPD is treatable through different therapy options, particularly dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, which is specifically designed for BPD. Medication can also help symptoms. And understanding and empathy. Approach this topic with empathy and understanding. The experiences of these people with BPD can be very extreme due to intense past trauma. So like I was kind of saying, man, these people have experienced deep core wounds, deep core past trauma in their early childhood, and it rears its head by or around early adulthood. So, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been with somebody with BPD, and in my experience, it was hell, in my experience. Don't get me wrong, not every day was hell, and there was great times and definitely good memories, and memories that I'll have with me for the rest of my life, right? But at the end of the day, I could have made memories with anybody, and I could have made memories with somebody who is healthy and somebody who actually really truly did love me and has truly established a real bond with me over time. Not somebody that held a mask, and that's another video topic that I'm going to make. And, what is a narcissistic mask? I think that's pretty important to speak about these days, but yeah, that's everything I have right here, man. As far as what a narcissist is, that's what it is. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that this video provides you with a clear picture about what BPD is, so you can analyze yourself or other relationships in your life and begin to understand this disorder. If you have any of these traits or know anybody that you believe does, I encourage you to seek professional diagnosis and support, or offer them the same assistance. Ultimately, I make these videos as a source of information that can be helpful to you in life. Now that you're armed with the knowledge, you can choose what you need to do with it. Anyways, if you found this video helpful, I ask that you subscribe to my channel, like the video, drop a comment, and share this video with others, so it could help another person out there and get out and reach more people in the community. Stay tuned for my next video. I try to drop videos every day. I drop videos daily. All right, y'all. You guys have a great night. Bye.